Hey, welcome back. My name's Kel Gortrout, and today we are going to be taking a look at a video of Dave Ramsey trying to answer the question, does raising rent on my tenants make me a bad Christian? I know I've been making a lot of Landlord videos lately, and I know some of you guys really like it, but there are tons of other topics that I want to cover, so this might be the last one for a little while. Don't get me wrong, I would love to be known as the anti-landlord YouTuber, but I'm multifaceted, okay? There's more to me than that. For example, next week I will be launching an episode of my new show, Trout Tank. Will there be more than one episode? That depends entirely on what the viewers think of it. Before we watch Dave's lovely micro sermon, there is a little bit of background I want to give you because I somehow got this topic trending on Twitter. On January 5th at about 11 p.m., I crawled into bed and I typed Landlord bad into my YouTube search bar on my telephone, as I am wont to do. And wouldn't you know it, I found a sweet little video from Mr. Total Money Makeover himself. By the way, if you don't know who Dave Ramsey is, don't worry, we're gonna go over that in a minute. It's not important. Anyways, I found this little video which is titled, Should Landlords Feel Guilty About Raising Rent Prices? Now, you gotta understand that I'm already not a fan of Dave Ramsey. If you aren't sure how you feel about him, even at the end of this video, after you watch this segment, go watch Fundy Friday's video on him because it's very entertaining and it really sheds a light on how much of an evangelical grifter he truly is. But there was one snippet of Dave's video, it was like 50 seconds, that really just blew my mind, so I screen recorded it with the subtitles on so I could share that little bit to Twitter. So I captioned it, incredible mental gymnastics from Dave Ramsey here. Of course, my pals on Twitter really got a kick out of this video, you know. We shared our cathartic rage, we laughed, we cried, we kissed, then my melatonin kicked in and I basically forgot that I posted this. 3 days later, while I happened to be out of town, like for family reasons, I noticed there were a lot more comments on it, and I realized the tweet had been shared by a bunch of like big accounts and even like politicians and like these progressive church leaders, and they all apparently agreed with me that Dave's video sucked. Then I learned it was at like number 15 on the trending page. Needless to say, got some attention, and currently the video clip itself has over 1 million views on Twitter, which is fucking crazy. Then when I sat down to make this video, I realized that a bunch of like big streamers like Hassan and Majority Report already reacted to that clip, and there were like these news articles about it, and TMZ did a fucking article on it for some reason. On a serious note though, can I just take a moment and say how glad I am that more people are talking about this shit. I mean, I feel pretty cool for getting that trending. I've never felt that powerful, like, in my life. And I know it's just one small thing, but the whole point of me making this content is to get more people talking about this stuff and hopefully start to clear up some of the cognitive dissonance we all seem to live with regarding, you know, landlords and wealth and work and capitalism and Christianity. So it's pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool. So anyways, I got home yesterday and I really wanted to make a video on this, even though a lot of people already talked about it. But the difference is we are going to watch the full 7-minute video, never before seen, except on Dave Ramsey's channel, but don't click it because he's an idiot. Here's a quick overview of who Dave Ramsey is. Dave Ramsey is a personal finance radio personality, author, and businessman. He had a show on Fox Business. He wrote Total Money Makeover. He's also got about 1,000 other books, some of which are taught in high school because our education system is a fucking joke. He is a right-wing, conservative, evangelical Christian who exploits Christianity for profit, so that's always fun. He allegedly fired a customer service representative for being gay, another one for becoming pregnant out of wedlock. He has an anti-mask policy in his office. He's been a real estate agent since he was 18 years old. The only reason he got into faith is because he heard this multi-level marketing get-rich-quick guru guy say that business people are more trustworthy when they walk with Jesus.
And you're more worthy of trust, you're more trustworthy, and servants have a tendency to win in business more than and so if you don't know God, you're going to struggle in business. And he does this whole talk about God. And my buddy and I are going, I never heard anything like that before in my life.
Yeah, you get it. He's a dirtbag. Now, I should say that he is very successful, especially as an author when it comes to his get out of debt solutions. If some of the very common sense advice that Dave writes has helped you, I am very glad. Sadly, he throws a lot of other bullshit in there, but some of the stuff is, I would say, sound money advice. However, probably the only thing I agree with Dave Ramsey on is that debt is bad. The funny thing is, I think the Bible also agrees with us there. And while I would encourage everyone to try to get out of debt or to stop taking on new debt, I also like to sit around and consider things like, I don't know, why people had to take on that debt in the first place, or like why the system of debt is perpetuated within every single institution in our lives. Dave Ramsey, on the other hand, hates credit cards, debt collectors, and pretty much all debt except some home mortgages. But he blames the consumers themselves, not the system. You know what I mean? Like, he calls people stupid and lazy for, buying a car that's too expensive. He doesn't understand why anyone would ever take on debt, despite the fact that he literally had to file for bankruptcy. So there's that.
Today's question comes from Dan in Washington, D.C. I'm a landlord who owns multiple rental properties. Over the past year or two, rent prices have seen a big increase. This is great for a landlord, but not so great for the tenant. I know I need to raise my rental rates to keep up with the increased overhead costs. However, this causes direct hardship to my tenants that have been good tenants for the past few years. As a Christian, this is hard for me. I would feel bad if raising rent caused them to have to move after they've made the house their home. I did not get into real estate to subsidize people's living expenses, but I also didn't get into real estate to displace families either. I love investing in real estate, so I don't see myself exiting this field, so I'd like to hear your advice on how to balance this equation.
Okay, so that is the blinds.com question of the day for Dave. Okay, so just to rephrase, Dan is a landlord with multiple properties. He says rent prices have gone up in the area and he needs to raise prices for increased overhead cost. But he feels like a bad Christian if he raises the rents, and then that forces the people to move because they've been such good tenants for years. He would like Dave's advice on how to balance the equation because he wants to keep investing in real estate. The biggest thing I want to point out is that this person specifically wrote to Dave Ramsey for advice. Why? Because they want a Dave Ramsey answer, right? It would be like if your boyfriend cheated on you and you specifically called Carrie Underwood for advice, right? Like, you kind of know what you're going to get. Even though it sounds like a question asked in good faith, Dan is looking for someone to confirm what he wants to hear. He wants someone to tell him it's okay to raise the rents because guess what? He knows it isn't. He knows in his heart that that's not being a good Christian. He also mentions that his overhead costs have increased. Now, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. All he said is that like nearby rates on rentals have gone up, but that doesn't mean that his mortgage on the property went up. In fact, he's probably eligible for like a cash out refinance, if anything. He also said these long-term tenants are great, which I'm guessing means that his maintenance and property management fees are really low, because if they were costing him money, he would not be calling them great. I think we all know that. It's possible his property taxes went up, but that's also relative to the like appraised value of the building. But if anything, it just kind of proves that the landlord doesn't pay the property taxes. The renters do, just like the renters pay the mortgage and the insurance and the maintenance. The landlord also makes a profit on top of all that, so that means the renter's also subsidizing the landlord's lifestyle. My guess is that this landlord's increased overhead costs are coming from him wanting to buy up more properties to rent out and needing to free up some cash or increase his income on paper so that the bank lets him buy more shit. So his renters are also buying him more rental homes. It's a sick fucking system.
It is sweet that you've got a big heart like this, and that's a nice thing. And you're not exiting the landlord field. And so you are going to have to learn to balance your faith with business practices that are not dishonoring to your faith. Treat other people like you would want to be treated. Okay?
Oh, treat other people you want to be treated. Okay, so Dave's thinking pretty hard about this question. He says you need to balance your faith with business practices that don't dishonor your faith. I also just realized I haven't mentioned faith yet, like this whole video, but it's a really interesting aspect to this question. Now, personally, I was raised as a Christian, but since about the age of 15, I haven't believed in much of anything, let alone God. If you are a person of faith, that's great. Do your thing. I'm not going to try to stop you. However, as someone who lives in America, it's woven into every aspect of our lives here. It's part of our government, our relationships, it's on our money. So I have lots of opinions about it. It would be weird if I didn't. But Dave even admits that he only became a Christian because some business grifter told him that he would come off as more trustworthy if he was a Christian man. One of my spiciest, edgy atheism hot takes is that being Christian or religious or dogmatic about anything really makes you easier to scam. It makes you a perfect target. However, just for the sake of argument, let's pretend I'm a nice Christian girl for this reaction. I will take Dave's weird Christian doublespeak as truth. I'll pretend that God and the Bible are things we should follow, and I won't be a snarky bitch about it. Starting right now.
I lease a building for Ramsey Solutions that is an office warehouse. We're not the owner of it. About 5 miles from where we sit right now, from our buildings that we own. And the lease is coming up for renewal. If the guy raises my rent to market rate, why does that make him a bad Christian? That was a passive-aggressive question. Answer is, it doesn't.
So Dave rents this building and he says the lease is about to end and might go up since the market rate has increased. First, I just want to ask why. Why has the market rate increased, Dave? What causes that? Could it possibly have something to do with the fact that everyone and their mom views property investing as a job? Maybe? And also, if your building's owner refused to arbitrarily, match that market rate, wouldn't that sort of thing eventually drive the local rates down since other commercial landlords would have to compete? Also, did the landlord's cost go up? And if so, how much in relation to the increase? Because they were already making a margin for themselves. But how much of a new margin are they adding, right? But more importantly, I don't like the part where he frames it as, does this make him a bad Christian? No, it doesn't. As a nice, sweet Christian girl, I disagree. I think the very framing of the question is irrelevant because you are talking about commercial real estate for your business. The person who wrote in was a residential landlord. If he raises the rent, those people might not be able to live there anymore. Now, I don't think God would really agree that the basic need of living indoors should be used as a form of income. Business is one thing, and I don't love business, but why does someone's shelter, their domicile, need to be another man's revenue source? Y'all really need to start digging deep and asking this question because it's very harmful to all of us when we do this. We've all agreed, well, we haven't agreed. People like Dave have all agreed that that's okay because they're benefiting from it. And we all just have to go along with it unless we fucking fight back. Those people on my fucking Twitter post are, oh, you're just a lazy leftist. You just don't want to pay your rent. Dude, I pay my rent. I pay my rent every month. We're never fucking late on rent. It sucks. But the thing is, I'm still allowed to criticize this system. It doesn't matter if I pay rent, if I own a house, if I am a landlord. You should still be able to think critically about this fucking system. Also, doesn't it say in Matthew that you should give everything you have to the poor? Okay, so all you Christians watching, are we just ignoring certain Bible verses? Oh, what, we've been doing that for centuries? Oh, sorry, I said I wasn't going to be a snarky bitch, but it's really hard. So the next portion is what I posted on Twitter, and it is chock full of some bullshit. Let's go.
Okay, I own rental property, single-family homes, among many other properties that we own. And if I raise my rent to be market rate, that does not make me a bad Christian. I did not displace the person out of that house if they can no longer afford it. The marketplace did.
Hey, man. Yeah, you did. You literally did. You said, if I raise the rent to market rate, meaning you are the one doing the action of raising the rent, and then you say you're not the one who displaced them. You did it. Okay? You chose to become a landlord, then you kept being a landlord. Then when the market rate went up, you decided to raise your rents. That was all you. This is only the first half of what I posted, but yeah, this stupid guy literally believes that when landowners collectively raise rents, it isn't their fault prices went up. It was the will of the market. I guess when you believe in a God that kills people and gives babies cancer, it's pretty easy to also put your faith in a market that makes people homeless and love that market. Oh, sorry, I forgot. God is good. God is love. God is light. Hey, Dave, for a guy who owns land, you sure don't own your personal decisions. Another thing that really bothers me about this is that Dave is huge on setting a written budget. It's like one of his biggest pieces of advice, have a written budget. But if your landlord comes in and arbitrarily changes your fucking rent, that is gonna fuck your whole budget up. Like if you're trying to save or do a debt snowball, and Dave hates debt so much, right? It's gonna mess up your whole system.
I did not displace the person out of that house if they can no longer afford it. The marketplace did. The economy did. The ratio of the income that they earned to their housing expense displaced them. I didn't cause any of that. And so you are not displacing them. You're taking too much credit for what's going on. If they need to move to a cheaper house because they can't afford, they're going to move to a lesser house. Because if they move, they're going to pay market rent.
Yes, I'm getting big Jesus vibes from this. Okay, so that's where I ended the clip on Twitter. It was just those two portions. He said, the landlord doesn't displace the tenant. The marketplace did it. The economy did it. The ratio of income to their housing expense displaced them. Oh my God, Blueberry's back. She's still coming in. But here's Frank. I don't know if you guys remember Frank. Oh, Frank. Maybe Frank will say hi. Come on. Oh, she's back. Okay. Oh, she said hi. Say it in there. Oh, say hi. Oh yeah, he said the ratio of their income to their housing expense is what displaced them. Hey, Dave. Who raised their housing expense? It's such big brain reasoning. It's kind of amazing to watch someone like wiggle out of this shit in real time. Also, cool fucking headsets, by the way, guys. Really cool. See, he says the family can go ahead and move to a lesser home, a home they can afford based on the market rate. And of course, he underlines the fact that none of this makes him a bad Christian. Real quick, and I will put a clip in here. I just want to tell you guys about this time in the 1980s where Dave Ramsey, he started to accumulate some wealth. And then there was this bank law that changed. But he had a $1.2 million line of credit with this bank, and he was forced to file bankruptcy because of it. And I'm sure there are way more super shady details that we don't know about. But he literally said at one of his speaking gigs that they filed bankruptcy to, quote, keep the sheriff from taking the baby bed.
So September 22nd of 1988, we met with a bankruptcy attorney.
That night, we signed bankruptcy papers. I'll never forget that.
He filed them on Friday morning. So we filed bankruptcy on the 23rd to keep the sheriff out of our house and keep him from taking the baby bed.
He can blame himself, he can blame the bank, he can blame the government for changing that law, but it seems like he comes so close to realizing that this entire system is so fucked up without quite making it all the way there. Like, you know, and at the time that he filed bankruptcy, he had a pretty good net worth, and he still had like no control over the situation. But, does he really not see how people in way worse situations might fall upon hardship? Also, he has this book called Baby Steps, and in it he outlines the 7 steps for building wealth. Number 7 is literally build wealth and give. First of all, the statement itself feels contradictory to itself. Build wealth and give. But Dave, where is this motto now? Like, you're gonna raise the rent? They're already paying your mortgage for you, man. Like, what else could you possibly try to squeeze out of these people? Where is the giving part of this, Dave? Like, all of your advice is hot dog shit. You're so full of shit. Also, I don't think I've ever said this, but when you decide to invest in a rental property, you're making the decision to become involved in someone else's quality of life, okay? If you don't want to be tied to someone in that way, in the intimate way of owning the building where they eat and sleep and raise their family and keep their things and spend their time, don't become a fucking landlord. It's like when people start a business and don't take responsibility for their employees' awful quality of life due to low wages. Don't start a business if you can't pay a living wage. That's not a good business. You are a failed business person if your employees can't get their basic needs met, okay? You suck. Their suffering is on you. And if you believe in God, you better believe He sees that shit, okay? Let's continue.
Now, having said all of that, I've had situations, because I manage the properties with a heart and a head, both. I don't personally manage them, but we do, my family does. That someone is sick. I'll just, I remember one time, a long time ago, a lady had cancer. Am I going to evict someone in the middle of chemo? No.
Wow. Okay, you know what? I was wrong. Some landlords really are good. Did you hear that? Dave Ramsey refuses to evict someone in the middle of chemo. That is straight up biblical right there. Like, that's what Jesus was talking about, okay? God said, oh, it's easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. But he literally failed to consider that Dave Ramsey would be willing to let a dying woman live in her house and continue paying Dave rent, and instead of kicking her the fuck out, okay? That's amazing. Praise be.
Am I going to evict someone in the middle of chemo? No, I'm not. I'm going to work with them. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to have clear conversations. I want to know what's really going on. I don't want to be duped.
Okay, well, that took a turn.
By the situation. But on the other hand, I also want to treat other people like I'd want to be treated. That's a biblical mandate. And so if I were in that situation, how would I want to be treated? Well, I'd love some mercy, some grace. But mercy and grace because rents went up in general, and I can't afford to live here anymore because my job didn't go up as much as much as the cost of a loaf of bread or a gallon of gasoline went up, because welcome to inflation. This is not something you caused. Now, you didn't cause the cancer either, but that is a temporary thing. This other thing's going to be there forever. That family is never going to be able to afford to live there if they can't afford to live there.
That's worse. So anyways, this is some pretty amazing reasoning right here. He says to treat others like you want to be treated for the second time. Cancer and chemo are really bad, but I also feel like my family being displaced from our home is pretty high up on the list of like things I don't want to happen to me, right? Like, is a hurricane worse? Yeah, probably. But like he said, he can't cause cancer. He didn't cause a hurricane, but you know what he can cause? An increase in the rent. And like he said, cancer is temporary. It could go away. The problem could go away. But the rent increase is forever. That's worse. So the one thing he has control over is like where he draws the line at taking responsibility. He won't evict someone because of cancer as long as it's real and she can prove it's real and she's not scamming him. But if it's because the market goes up, well, the market gets what the market wants, baby. And the market doesn't treat others how it wants to be treated. No, it just plows through cities and towns and it displaces little families who were previously really good tenants, okay? We sure do love our market. Also, he said, if they can't afford it, they're never going to be able to afford it. But what about like when they moved in and they proved their income and they showed you 8 pay stubs and they give you their credit score and you did a background check on them, and then for years they paid your mortgage on time every single month? They sure afforded it then. But now that some little number on like Zillow went up, that family's no longer eligible? So while we're on the topic, let's talk about rent control. I remember a few years after I moved to San Francisco, I was talking to a friend who lived in who lived in another state. And they were like, oh, my landlord just raised our rent like $300. And I was like, they can't do that. That's illegal. And they were like, what are you talking about? You're so dumb. Anyways, it turns out the reason I thought that is because I had mostly rented in San Francisco, where we have rent control, meaning for most buildings, once you move in, your landlord can't change the rent. If you move out, then the landlord can like increase the rent between, you and the next tenant. That's one thing. And every year you live there, they technically can increase it by some small number, I think like 1.8%. It just depends on the year. However, the whole time I've lived in San Francisco, 10 years of renting here with various landlords, none of them have ever done the yearly increase. But what this means is, say you moved into your apartment in 1996, right? Your rent might be like $700 in the middle of San Francisco, which is notoriously, a place with high rent. But I know a ton of old people who, they live on a fixed income and they live in an amazing San Francisco apartment and they can afford it, and their landlord can't do jack shit. And someday those tenants are gonna die and their landlord will go in and slap on a coat of white paint and start charging $3,500 for it. So then I found out that other places, your landlord can just like raise the rent after your lease is up. They can just be like, oh, it's just like hundreds of dollars more now. Sorry if that ruins your life. If your area doesn't have rent control, start advocating for it. See what you can do to make that happen. Contact your rent board or something. Okay, anyways, back to the Dave Ramsey show.
It's not going to change. Now, if they come in and they go, I'm getting a raise in 4 months and here's the contract, can you wait then? Yeah, I'll give them a little mercy.
What? That is a made-up scenario. Nobody gets a contract that says, oh, in 4 months, you're going to get a raise. Show this to your landlord. What the fuck are you talking about, dude? Don't bring up mercy. That's a made-up scenario.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But this idea that you have to equate Christian and kindness with not having good marketplace experience is not true. It's not a factual way of viewing this.
Guys like Dave Ramsey hide behind this entity, the marketplace, and it's so damaging. It's what men in powerful positions have done for so long. It's like, even during slavery, they used the same logic to hide behind. Like, oh, it isn't me, it's just the system. Don't hate the player, hate the game, except you literally own the game.
And you brought this up with a caller earlier who was kind of experiencing a similar situation, and you said, hey, this is being a good steward of the asset that you are managing.
And Jesus said unto the people, be a good steward of your assets. Make sure you upgrade the smoke detectors at your rental property, or else thou shalt be seen as evil in the eyes of God.
And, he says in the question that they've made the house their home. It's not their home. It's your home. It'll never be their home as long as they're renting it.
Good point.
And
when you're a renter,
like
you kind of know that.
Yeah.
I've been a renter, and I didn't expect to stay there.
Dude, what the fuck is wrong with you? Okay, so you think that these people who rent from you will never truly be at home, and yet you perpetuate that system on purpose. That's awful. It is their home. Sure, there are terms. There's an agreement, but you literally leased it to them so they could live there and make it their home. What? Hi. Anyways, like I was saying, it is their home. And sure, there are, terms. There's an agreement. But you literally leased it to them so they could make it their home in return for them making payments on a property that you get to keep the equity on. I don't understand why you need to not let them make it their home. It's so fucked up. You already have the upper hand so much in this situation. It's so dehumanizing, too. It really bothers me, the idea that they just think of renters as lesser, these transient people who don't deserve to feel at home. It's so fucked up. And it's the same exact landlords who say, I'm providing a service. I'm a housing provider. But it's like, that must be a pretty shitty service if they can't even feel at home. Also, it's not Dave's home. Dave lives in a fucking mansion. The unit is his investment property. Okay, it's not his home. It is a source of passive income for him. It'll never be his home. It's probably a dump in a part of town that he wouldn't even let his limo driver take him through. And to add to the rent control thing, there are 6 units in my building, and 2 of them have housed the same families for 35 plus years at this point. They're like 3rd generation, like they raised their kids there and now their grandkids come and visit. Their rent is probably like much cheaper than mine, probably 1/3 of what mine is. I'm sure they'd love to own, but maybe it's not possible, maybe they don't want it, but why shouldn't it be their home? Like, explain to me, what is the purpose of landlords if the renters cannot even make it their home?
I'm passing through. No one that rents, very few people that rent go, I want to be here 50 years. I think I'm just going to stay in your house for 50 years.
No one does that.
This is my forever home. I'm a renter. No one says this.
The really dark part about this is that Dave understands that if that were the case, if someone stayed for 50 years, the amount of income and like stability the landlord would get from that is huge. First of all, the renter would have paid off the entire mortgage by then, and it would have been done without any gaps or vacancies. The landlord wouldn't have needed a property manager or to show or upgrade the unit. And the best part of all is that the family that rents it wouldn't get a dime of that money back. 100% of the equity would go to the landlord's family.
And honestly,
things that people don't say.
I like taking it situation by situation and going, is this a true hardship or is it really, you got to tighten up the budget? And so at that point, I may give them some resources, maybe some Ramsey resources to say, hey, here's the total money makeover. I want to help you create that margin. I'd love to keep you as a tenant. You've been great.
Wow, such generosity. And it is generous because Dave Ramsey's resources are super overpriced. I thought Dave was bad, but the 20 seconds that this guy has been speaking has made me like way angrier than any of the shit Dave said, if I'm being honest. Like literally just giving your tenants a book called Entrepreneur-leadership. It's Entre-leadership. And saying, hey, rent goes up $250 at the end of the month. Let's tighten up that budget. Let's create that margin, okay? Let's buy me a new investment property.
And how you interact with them in kindness is fine, too. You don't have to be unkind. You don't have to be cold and transactional. You can go, I understand, and it hurts my heart, but I'm doing this with all these things. Now, if you've got a property that's gone way up, maybe you stage it up. And that's how you'd want to be treated if you were there. Treat other people like you want to be treated. But if you really would expect to get to live there on rental rates that are 75% of the market forever, just because your landlord's a Christian, then you've got something screwed in your brain.
Okay, so Dave says that if you're going to raise the rent on your tenants, you just you can be nice while you do it. Don't be like a dick about it. He says it hurts his heart, but if it's a big increase, then do it in stages. And then for the 3rd time, he says to treat other people like you want to be treated. People say a lot of things, but I always notice that when people repeat themselves a lot, it's kind of like they're trying to convince themselves. Dave, are you saying that if you were living in a house, you would want the rent to go up? Is that what you're saying? What are you fucking talking about, man? He also asked if people really expect to live there on 70% rates just because their landlord's a Christian. First of all, I don't really see how any good Christian would be a landlord in the first place, since the very nature of the relationship is exploiting another person's basic needs. However, since pretty much every grifter I've ever met or heard about or seen in a documentary has been a Christian, it makes a lot of sense that your fucking landlord is going to be a Christian. I treat other people how they would like to be treated, because unlike Christians, I don't expect other people to have the same exact desires as me.
You really do. That's just not how that is not a calling of the Bible. That is not something Scripture calls us to undercharge because we're Christians. Now, we don't need to overcharge. We don't need to rip people off. We certainly want to tell the truth and those kinds of things. We're not trying to take advantage in some way.
Okay, but dude, the very nature of investing in real estate is based on ripping people off. They cannot afford to buy a home. I wonder fucking why. And so they're forced to rent. And you decided that this is what you're going to do instead of working. You're inherently overcharging them. That's how the whole thing works.
But sometimes people get in their head that anybody that sells anything can't be a Christian. I can't believe you don't just give all your stuff away, Ramsey. All these people that work here, 1,100 of them that want payroll, they require that I don't give my stuff away because they like for their payroll checks to clear. That's how this stuff works. That's why we sell a book instead of giving away a book. Can I personally afford to give you a $2 or $10 or $20 book? Yeah, I can personally afford to do that. But I got to make sure that the people here eat that work on this stuff. And so it's not an unchristian act to have interaction in the marketplace.
It's a good word.
This is a tough one because I'm literally so far gone at this point that I'm like, yeah, it is unchristian to have interaction in the marketplace. I also feel like our current economic system is so different than anything that was happening in the Bible. Like, I don't even see how he can talk about the market like it's this common Christian biblical principle. He also says, people say, oh, Dave, why don't you just give your stuff away? And here's the thing. Yes, Dave has to exist under capitalism, just like you and I do. Just like I have to put stupid fucking advertisements on my videos. Dave also has to make some money, although I would argue that he does a lot more to perpetuate the system of capitalism than I do. He also says, the 1,100 people on my payroll won't allow me to give my books away. They require it. But the thing is, those 1,100 people are in fact creating wealth for Dave, okay? Not the other way around. They are coming into work and clocking in, and he pays them, I don't know, $30 an hour. And for every hour they work, he earns twice that off of their labor. You think he's just hiring these people to create jobs and create wealth for them? No. By hiring them, he makes himself wealthier every time. Anyways, that was the video. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. If there were any parts of it that really stood out to you that you have something to say about. But I also thought it would be fun to let Dave know how we feel. I will put the link below, but you can write in and ask Dave questions about money and landlording and debt and all this stuff. Please do not send harassment. Okay? First of all, because whatever poor intern is responsible for sorting through the Ramsey Show inbox already hates their life enough. But really, if you have questions that maybe would slip through the filter and actually get put on the show, make it tough on Dave. Make him question some of these systems. And, it probably won't change his mind, but maybe some of the listeners will understand that he's full of shit when he answers these tough questions. So send some questions in. I'm serious. Let me know what you sent in too. Oh, by the way, once that Twitter post started to blow up, I posted a link below it to my Landlords Cause Climate Change video, and I was like, I'm so glad this is blowing up. I make videos about how evil landlords are. Go check it out. And I got some really funny comments, so I'm just gonna read them to you guys. Won't be watching commie bullshit on YouTube or anywhere else, Cupcake. Thanks, Steven. Another one said, wow, you are legit batshit crazy. Georgina Orwell said, you are a dimwit. Gender studies isn't paying off. Hey, I studied marketing, okay? Oh, I like this guy because he censors out his own swears. but he still included them. He said, I mean, you could stop being a lazy slob. Get off your fat ass and work harder. No one owes you a thing. Literally nothing. You are pathetic, as are most of the eunuchs replying to this thread. So anyways, that was fun. Thanks for watching. Landlords suck. Dave Ramsey sucks. Using Christianity to benefit your business sucks. And it's literally something Jesus flipped tables over. So I feel like when Dave Ramsey uses Christianity to platform, free market capitalism, it really just sucks, okay? Jesus probably would have been some type of socialist or collectivist anarchist. Anyways, go watch Fundy Fridays. Go tell Munecat to make a fucking deep dive on Dave Ramsey, because I would love to watch that. Yeah.
Some people worry about where they're going and where they're going to stay. Well, I've just signed on the gospel book and he taught me how to pray. I'm waiting for that mansion and I'm waiting for that day. God is my landlord and he taught me how to pray. God is my landlord, I see him every day. Kneeling down upon my knees in the good old fashioned way. Looking up